What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Rachel with Creative Space. Today, I'm going to talk about writing. So I've been a writer for about 15 years now, and I've been a very serious writer for about 10 of those 15 years. I've read a lot of blogs, I've read multiple different books on writing, and I've worked with lots of different writers. One thing that I don't really see talked about much that has helped me as a writer tremendously is critique groups and working with critiquers. That is the purpose of today's video. When I started getting very serious about writing, like I said about 10 years ago, I got into writing blogs a lot. Evil Editor, Query Shark, and Janice Hardy's Fiction University are three of my favorite writing blogs. I got involved in the different comments, I started talking with other writers, and that was how I got into working with and giving and receiving criticism and feedback on my writing and other people's writing, kind of collaborating in general. I found it a very formative and a very helpful experience. My favorite way to work with writers is one-on-one, but I learned quite a lot from the critique group that I was part of. So the benefits of working with critique one-on-one is that it's more private. You're not having to share your writing with a bunch of different people. You've just got like one person that you're going back and forth with, and you can build a friendship with one person very easily. In a critique group, you have the benefit of hearing multiple different opinions about the same piece of writing. Anytime that I offer criticism on other people's writing, when I hit something that could just be my personal opinion, I always try to recommend other writers whom they could show this to and say, get so-and-so's take on this, because they're going to think about it differently than I am, and they'll be able to give you a better perspective than if you just hear from me. That's built into a critique group because you'll have multiple people all working together. If multiple people all comment the exact same thing on the same piece of writing, if everybody says your love story is forced, for instance, they're probably all right. One of the ladies that I worked with in our critique group got her book published, and she said that for the reviews on her book, the criticisms that she received were pretty much the exact same things that we had been telling her she needed to fix. So consensus is an important tool in the world of writing. I think also with critique groups, you get to learn to sift other people's opinions better, because it's easy to want to change your writing to please someone. It's easy just to take that at face value. If you're working with a critique group, then you may have one person say you should take out a lot of these adverbs, and you may have someone else say, I love all of the adverbs, leave them exactly where they are. So then as the writer, you get to learn to strike the balance between, do you take them out, do you leave them in? In a lot of cases, you take some of them out and you leave some of them in. So I find the multiple perspectives is always very helpful. Proverbs has one of my favorite sayings, in a multitude of counselors, there's much wisdom. But then you've also got the question, how do you find people with whom to work on writing? Finding a single critiquer is easy for me, albeit nerve-wracking. In a lot of cases, just finding somebody who writes similarly to you. I personally write fantasy, and I find it very easy to connect with other fantasy writers and with sci-fi writers. Just approaching them and saying, hey, I know that you write. Would you be comfortable showing me your writing? You can develop that into a relationship. A lot of times, writers are happy to help other writers, in my experience, which is one of the things that I love about the writing community, is just that it's so easy to find people who are as passionate as you are about the things that you love. I've always found the writing community to be a very welcome and a very warm community. Finding one person to say, hey, will you go back and forth with is relatively easy. That is one conversation to have. Trying to wrangle multiple people together to say, hey, can we work together as a group, and balancing different personalities and finding how do you find a group that works well together is a lot more challenging. The one critique group that I worked with as a result of Janice Hardy of Fiction University fame, who created a group specifically for writers to network with each other and to form critique groups. And the group that I was part of started out with members came and went over the 2 or 3 years that we were active, and only once did we have to ask a member to leave. When we first formed the group, there was one person who did not take well to receiving criticism. We just sort of banned that person from the group. That person was kind of insane. Finding a lot of other writers at once can be more challenging. I personally find networking in general pretty easy, and I enjoy connecting people to each other. So I currently have a group. We're not a formal writing group. We're just a collaborative D&D group. But if I ever needed a critique group, I have this group of people whom I could turn to. So that takes a certain degree of extroversion, a certain degree of social skills. I would say look into Janice Hardy's Fiction University if you need help finding a critique group. But once you're in a group, or once you're working with another writer, giving and receiving feedback in general, you have to face the question, how do you give criticism well? I think the first and most important step to giving good feedback is to give compliments. It's easy to read somebody else's writing and to help them look for the flaws. It's easy to find the typos. It's easy to say, I would change this or this. If you start by saying, what are the things that I love? That does two things. That tells the writer where they're hitting the beats that they want to hit, and it tells them you care about them and you enjoy their story. Every writer wants to know that people enjoy their writing. Writing is the stereotypically lonely endeavor, but sharing writing is where it becomes communal. Obviously, if you share something only to be shot down, you're not going to want to share it. So that's where the compliments come in. They build your confidence, they build your writing skill because you know where you're doing things right, and they fuel the love and the joy of writing. When you give criticism, it comes couched from this place of love, as it were, and it comes couched in, they like my writing, they are invested in my writing. Which brings me to the next point. How do you receive criticism? So, like I mentioned, working with critique groups, working with multiple perspectives really forces you to learn that balance between taking everyone's advice and sticking true to what you personally want and like. There's a fine balance to be struck between confidence in your writing and humility. Every writer can grow and improve and change. Every writer has strengths and every writer has weaknesses. And the trick is to learn where the weaknesses are. If you solve that one, let me know, because I have not figured it out completely yet. Being humble starts with being willing to say, maybe this does need to change, and being willing to take a look at the writing and say, do I need to cut this section out? Does this character need to change? What would it look like if I did this differently, as this person suggests? The confidence comes in being able to say, this is what I'm trying to convey. Figuring out when you hit that, partly through the use of other people's feedback. Gratitude is always important. Anytime that somebody has offered me feedback on my writing, I make it a point to respond enthusiastically. I say enthusiastically. Anytime somebody compliments me on my writing, I just get extremely awkward and do the verbal equivalent of finger guns because we can't handle compliments. It's great. It's fabulous. Criticism is easier to work with because that's something that you can say, I can actively work on something. To a degree, you have to detach yourself from your writing. All feedback, even negative feedback, is an opportunity to learn and grow. The choices that you make now may be different from the choices that you would make in 5 years, which makes reading old writing dandy. I think overall, the most important thing when you're working with somebody is to have fun and enjoy it and appreciate the time and the effort that they will put into working with you on your writing. And if you're going to be working with someone else, the primary focus is always, how do you make them feel excited about their writing? How do you convey to them that you are invested in their story and you want to see them tell the best story that they possibly can? Writing is a personal and introverted sort of endeavor, but sharing writing should always be a communal and delightful thing. I'm going to think of another topic to ramble about when it comes to writing, so if y'all have anything you want to hear about, leave me a comment, like and subscribe to the channel, and see you next time.